For me, London was always temporary. I was born in Venezuela in the 1960s, in the boom time of the golden age of Venezuela. Caracas was the Wild West, you can do what you like. This is a very special place because it really is based as Tenerife was hundreds of years ago. The goat came from Egypt 5,000 years ago to the Canary Islands. How did that happen? Look across here, that's our very own pet volcano there. And his heart is missing. His heart is missing, of course, because he leaves it behind. Look at this wall right now. Who built that and when was it built? What enormous effort was made by our ancestors to do agriculture. In this bay is buried 3 sunken galleons of gold. No one's been up here in 50, 60 years. I find it very difficult to believe that I'm 65. Time goes so fast, especially when you're having fun. My advice to anybody is live in the moment, enjoy every moment. And Alexander von Humboldt had come a few years before. When he saw the Orotava Valley, he fell to his knees and he declared that this was the most beautiful place that he'd ever seen in the world. In Tenerife, it's a paradise to live, but it's absolute hell to get anything done. And Spain is as close to a communist country now as you could possibly get. Whatever happens in America, whatever happens in Europe, whatever happens in Russia, whatever happens in the Middle East, here is my domain. I was born in Venezuela, brought up in Britain, and I'm gonna die in the Canaries.
Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today I have a very special guest with a very special story, and I just want to let you know that I'm slightly changing the format to bring you this story. So without further ado, let's transport ourselves from the city of Malaga, Spain down to Tenerife, Canary Islands, Spain. Let's go.
And here we are in Tenerife, and in Tenerife here you could be in Surrey in England. This is an English Protestant church, the Anglican Church of Puerto La Cruz. It was the only Anglican church in all of Spain, and we are now just going into the Diocese of Gibraltar. The diocese being the religious enclave. This is the vicar's house in front, and this in the 1960s was restored by my father. And this is like England land. I mean, you're really in England, in the middle of Puerto de la Cruz. You've got the British School, the British Library, the Anglican Church, the old bull ring here.
Oh wow, it's almost totally grown in and abandoned.
Completely abandoned. Bullfighting is illegal in the Canary Islands.
So yeah, guys, this just gives us a little bit of a panorama, a little bit of view of what we just saw. We got some massive waves down there, and so this is life on the coast. Puerto de la Cruz, right? It's a port city or port town. Or now we're gonna head up into the mountains.
We're gonna go right over there with that. You can see that mountain peak. That's a volcano. There are 350 volcanoes in Tenerife. That's one of them there. And we're gonna go there. That's just at the entrance of Buena Vista. This is the Plaza de la Libertad, and it's dedicated to the liberation of South America. And here you see the Venezuelan coat of arms before Chavez. The original coat of arms, and this is Simón Bolívar. He doesn't look anything like statues you normally see of Simón Bolívar. He's a much younger man. His mother's family came from Garachico, and so he had Tenerife in his veins.
So what does Simón Bolívar have to do? Simón Bolívar was Venezuelan. He was a criollo. You're a Venezuelan.
Yes, I am a Venezuelan.
So how the heck do we get a British man who's Venezuelan? Explain this. It's a long story, but we'll be talking about it throughout the video. But
my grandfather was born in the Falkland Islands, otherwise known as the Malvinas by the Hispanic world. And because he spoke a bit of Spanish and he had the right connections, he came here in 1909. He was head of the banana plantations here for fiefs. Consequently, my father was born here in 1920. And after the Second World War, where he distinguished himself as a special operations executive in Gibraltar, he went to South America, first of all to Ecuador, and with Shell, the Shell Oil Company. They transferred him to Venezuela, and I was born there. I was brought up in Venezuela, educated in the UK, in England, in private schools, and when he retired in 1975, he came back to where he felt that he was from, which was the Canary Islands. He was a highly decorated British citizen. He had the OBE, and he was recognized as a scholar in Canary Island history. So I learned a lot from him. Anyway, I then went to London and spent most of my working life in London because there was nothing here for me. And I came back to Tenerife in 2011. Spent the last year of my father's life with him, and I've lived here ever since.
So not many Anglos can understand that feeling of, hey, like, you remember as a child taking the plane 3 times a year unaccompanied, you said. Yeah. You would see the Guaira, you would land in Caracas, you would see the mountains, and then oftentimes you would come here, or you still come here and you see.
We'd come here once a year. We'd come here to see my grandfather, my grandmother. My grandfather died when I was quite young. But here on this plaza, you can see all of the coats of arms of all the different South American republics.
Interesting question. In London, do you guys have the coat of arms of, I don't know, the United? Do you celebrate the fact that the United States became independent there?
Not really, no. Although Simón Bolívar does have his own house in the middle of London. It's owned by the Venezuelan government, and it has a theatre in it. Here's the Spanish coat of arms, Spanish and the Venezuelan next to each other. This is the family tree of Simón Bolívar. Here he is. Here's Simón Bolívar, and this is his family tree coming down from Garachico.
Yeah.
His father was from Bilbao.
Basque country, Bolívar.
That's right.
A little town in the mountains there. I've walked through it. A lot of people that are watching might not understand what is the connection between Venezuela and the Canary Islands.
The Canary Islands were very, very, very poor, and the people here were starving, and they emigrated across the ocean to Venezuela. In fact, Venezuela was populated by Canary Islanders, and lots of America was. In fact, the town of San Antonio in Texas is a Canary-founded town. It was founded by Canary Islanders, but Venezuela is called the 8th island. There's 7 islands in the Canary Islands. Venezuela is known as the 8th island because it's so full of Venezuelan people. The Canary Islanders went there starving hungry in open boats, and many of them died. It was a terrible, terrible emigration. Much the same as what you've been seeing here in Hierro with the Africans coming into Europe. This was an immigration like no other. It was from the old world to the new world by Canary Islanders, and they were pioneers in the colonization of Cuba, of Venezuela, and all of the South American countries going down. So that's why there's such a huge connection between Venezuela and the Canary Islands. It's also why, now that we have Chavez and Maduro, and the Venezuelan Bolivarian Republic bullshit going on, all those sons of Canary Islanders, sons and daughters of Canary Islanders, and their grandfathers and their thing, they all get Spanish passports if they come back here, because they've set 3 generations back. And so we have a huge immigration now from Venezuela to the Canary Islands.
When I was going through that last island, El Hierro, the last island of Europe, I constantly met people your age or older who had lived there in the 60s and the 70s, and the way they spoke about it, tears came down from their eyes. They missed their Caracas, they said.
Venezuela was a fantastic, fantastic country. When I was a kid, we were so proud to be Venezuelans, and I remember because I was known as Catire, El Rubio, because I was blonde-haired, and so they used to call me Gringo, and they used to call me Catire, and I always wanted to dye my hair black and hide my blue eyes because I wanted to be Venezuelan. It was an extraordinary feeling because it was such a beautiful country, and we lived the most incredible life there. It was totally, we were in the top 5%, and the rest of the 95% was deadly poor. But and we never mixed, really. We never mixed with the Venezuelan. There's a group called Bios Caracas Boys. They were very big in those days as well, and they used to play salsa, and they'd come to our beach club. We were in the Millionaires Beach Club, and we'd actually get Bios Caracas Boys. I mean, that's like getting, like the Rolling Stones to come and play a concert for you. Yeah. It was like fantastic.
And so you said basically you lived like a double life.
Double life, yeah. Between
you're bicultural, bilingual. Yeah, those are 2 important
tricultural, really, because I'm British, Venezuelan, Canario. My father identified himself as Canario, even though he was British. I mean, he was very British. He was educated in Britain. He served for the British Army. As I said, decorated by the Queen. He was very British, but he still considered himself to be Canario. And he spoke Spanish like a Canario perfectly. And the same with me. I consider myself to be Canario, British, but Venezuelan, because I have Venezuelan nationality. I have Venezuelan passport and British passport. Not that the Venezuelan passport is any good at all for anything. So that's the way it's gone.
When you spent your working life in London, did you sometimes feel like an emptiness or
I did. I always said one day I'm going to go and live in the Canary Islands in Tenerife. I always said that, but unfortunately the people that I had grown up with, my ex-wife, she didn't want to come to Tenerife. Life went on and on and on, and it wasn't until I got divorced and my life fell to bits a bit that I was able to get out of England. And once I was out of England, that was it. I was here, and it took a big jump, because I had to rip my whole self away from my family and my whole base, my professional base, and come here and be completely poor, because I had nothing. I had my parents here, thankfully. So I had a soft cushion, but I didn't have a job and I didn't have any proper income. The most important thing was that I established a way of living off €5 a day. That was my motto. My motto was live off €5 a day. If I could get up in the morning and have €5 in my pocket, that was enough for my coffee, my bocadillo, and it would get me all the way through the day. Back in 2011, €5, you could live off that here. You wouldn't have been able to park your car for 10 minutes in London for €5. So it was like a completely different life, and it's been ever so good ever since.
But the important thing is that you're able to fall back on your other cultural side, your Spanish-speaking side, and you can readapt, right?
That's the other thing. You see, I have childhood friends from here who I grew up with, and I know that if I ever needed something, like food or anything, money, I could go and knock on their door, and they would say, look, I don't have anything to give you, I don't have no money to give you or anything like that, but come in and have a plate of potaje. Now, that doesn't happen in England. It just doesn't. Yo estoy en Garachico. Estoy con Elliot, el aventuroso. Vive en Málaga, pero es americano, es gringo.
Sí, se mete en todos los barrios chungos, más chungos.
Sí, en Sevilla y en sitios así donde le pelan bola.
Hola, Elliot.
Hola, ¿qué tal, Pau?
This big cliff behind us, they roll balls of hay, great big haystacks of hay. They light them on fire and they roll them down here to represent the volcanic eruption of 1709, which came here and completely engulfed the whole of the bay. You can see this was the bay, and the bay went right the way around there, and all of this is what they call Isla Baja, or volcanic eruption. That's what Isla Baja means. It's volcanic eruption that goes into the sea and forms land. They call it Isla Baja.
All the whole town over there is new land.
But all of this here is new. I mean, new, 1709 new. But you can imagine here the Spanish galleons full of gold coming back from the New World, laden with all of their goods and their gold. They would rest here before going on to Spain.
To Cadiz.
Yeah, this is where they took on water and they took on supplies. This was the superhighway. It still is the superhighway, by the way, but it's the internet superhighway. We have some of the fastest internet connections here, like 1 gigabit connections are normal into your house here, because all of the internet from Africa, Europe, South America and North America all comes through Tenerife, which is why President Clinton was here. He was sorting that deal out. I don't know what he's got his fingers in a lot of pies. But because the boats left here to go to the New World, this statue is dedicated to the immigrants that went to the New World. You can see he's left his heart behind. He's got all his luggage behind. That's his luggage going to the New World. His suitcases, right? Monumento al Emigrante Canario. Here he is. And you can see him, and his heart is missing. His heart is missing, of course, because he leaves it behind.
You know, I've never met someone who knows this much history. It's just a pleasure to have someone who can tell me all this magical history. Obviously, pirates, British pirates would come here.
British pirates would come here. You had, of course, the very famous defeat of Nelson, who was defeated only once in his career, and it was here off the coast of Santa Cruz when he came to take the Canary Islands. But many of the Hawkins, Sir Walter Raleigh, many of the British, what we would call admirals and heroes, were considered pirates because they attacked the Canary Islands, they attacked the Spanish gold here in the Canary Islands. And they say that here in this bay is buried 3 sunken galleons of gold. Some 150 divers have lost their lives here in a cave that goes underneath this town, looking for that gold. Scores of people have lost their lives looking for that gold here. There is a cave, a very interesting cave that goes under Garachico, and it's a volcanic breathing hole which was formed in the last eruption. In that eruption there was no loss of life. Everybody escaped. In that sense, it was a happy ending. We are now in a time capsule. I mean, you won't see bananas like this anywhere else on the island. This was like Puerto de la Cruz was like this, you know, when I was a boy. Yeah. The bananas came right up to the town. In fact, bananas was everything they knew here. Canary Islands have always been a monoculture. Before bananas, they had cochineal, which was the red dye. Before that they had sugarcane. They had here for a while until South America was much easier to grow in Cuba and things. Orchila is the purple dye of the Catholic Church, and orchila was grown here and exported around the Catholic world. All those purple robes that the bishops and the archbishops wore, they were dyed by orchila, and the red, cardinal red, was from the other one, the cochineal, and that also came from here. Famously, that was the main export, and it was all exported to places like London, where they went into the port in London, and they actually have Canary Wharf. Canary Wharf is the actual dock where products from the Canary Islands were brought, and it's now obviously the financial center of London, with the huge buildings that you see. Now you can see why they call this the Machu Picchu of Europe.
The majority of British tourists, European Germans, Dutch, they're coming here to do like all-inclusive resorts, right? Or do you have some people who really connect with what you're doing? Is there communities like...
Well, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at those people who want to connect with ecotourism, who want to connect with getting back in touch with how people lived 100 years ago. That's really my objective. My objective is to have a farm where people can come and see how they lived in the Canary Islands 100 years ago. Elliot, you're going to stay overnight and you're going to experience how people used to live 100 years ago in the Canary Islands. No mod cons.
See the smile, man? This is what it's all about.
I'm miles away from anything. You know, we just about have hot water when we boil it. Oh. This is probably the biggest farm on Tenerife.
It's not like, you know, in the United States, you can buy and sell land anytime you want. You just...
Huge amounts of land.
Huge amounts of land.
Land is at a premium, obviously. There's a small island. And here we have what in the United States terms is a small piece of land. But in terms of here, this is like 50 hectares, 240,000 square meters, which is about just under 60 acres. Let me just find it.
Ah, Venezuela. Made in Venezuela. How the hell did you get this here?
Everything came from Venezuela. The steel, everything, because before Venezuela this is probably 70 years old. In fact, there's a story here that there were 3 brothers and they were fighting over who owned the land. One day, 2 of the brothers disappeared and they said they had emigrated to Venezuela. Legend says that they're buried here on the farm somewhere. So maybe they'll come out tonight and haunt us. The 2 brothers from Venezuela who
won't be scary, man. It'll be a party with rum, with their Venezuelan.
Cacique! And a bit of salsa. And a bit of Coca-Cola. I don't think they ever made it to Venezuela though. You murdered your neighbor and then said, well, he immigrated to Venezuela.
Oh, another one left.
Look at how the sun comes over that. They say that's the third highest peak on Tenerife. That one there. I don't know that for a fact, but...
So we're gonna feed the horses.
This one here is ranchero, and that one there is capitán.
Fue la única que conquistó a Zeus.
We think he's a bit lame. He brought these two back from Sevilla. Ranchero, ¿qué pasa, mi niño? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está mi niño? Eres guapo, ¿eh? Eres guapísimo. Sí, mi niño. So the idea here is to mate these animals with the female thoroughbred that we have up the top. You have to keep them all separate. The stallions have to be kept separate because they fight, and of course the female has to be kept separate because if they get a sniff of the female, they go mad. Look here, for instance, right? Mine was much worse than that. Here's my cross divide.
Wow.
You would not believe what this used to be. This didn't have a roof. This is a living room. This is my bedroom, my living room, my living quarters. In here, I have two cats.
Oh man, we are really going back.
So I have my own EcoFlow power generation here, which is all solar. Hey, look, they've left me a little present.
Or Salvaje, the wild.
Salvaje, you brought me a present and I didn't want him. Let's take him and put him out. You're a wild one.
Look at this, Salvaje. Look what you did. Now you don't want it.
Check him over that side, please. All right. We have no grid power here at all, no electric power. All of this is generated by solar. So I have one solar system which does all the lights in the building. I have another solar system which recharges my 240 volt system, which is that one which you've just seen, the EcoFlow. And then I have these ones which are cordless. They'll always give you some light in an emergency, but it's an independent system so that if anything failed, I've still got some light. And then these ones, which are photo sensitive, they're not on yet because it's not dark, but when it gets dark, these ones light up the whole time. But all of these ones, they're all running off a solar generated, big solar generation system.
Wow.
This room hasn't been done yet, but these are the bricks that are going to build the barbecue oven here. They're going to be in a barbecue oven here, and this is going to be the cooking kitchen. The idea here that this kitchen will be able to cater for maybe up to 30, 50 people. And they will, they'll come here on day trips. This is how this was, but better. This is like 10 times better than mine was. You can go back to the beginning of my episodes and see how this looked. Like everything was down. This looks like it's been here for 100 years, but it's been here for 2 months. This window I rescued from some guys who were using it as a ramp for their bicycle. This is 300 years old at least, this wood.
No, he dicho que no.
No.
You see how Arsendo's always in charge. They respect him.
¿Qué pasa? No,
She's really brave. She wanted to enter.
Ven aquí. Ven aquí.
She's not scared of riding horses.
La niña.
One big happy family.
Mira.
Una familia grande y feliz.
We use the toilet in here. There are dog poo bags. You put paper in there and then shove it in there. Right, the paper's there just in case you get caught short. There is hot water, but it needs to be heated by the generator. The water is all pumped in from our own sources of water capture. As you can see, we're in progress, work in progress. This is the main light. This is the backup light if you need it. You take this green cover off, and underneath you've got your bed made up, and you've got a blanket here, another blanket here. That's the British Club sign. That's the actual sign from the British Club from Puerto de la Cruz. It's the actual sailing ship that my grandfather came over from the Falklands in.
Wow.
Look at it. He was tied to the mast. He was so small They were afraid they were going to be, and it's just, there's the story on the back of it. The steamship that used to go between the Falkland Islands and in England.
Guys, I want to show you what it would have been like over 100 years ago to sleep like a Canary Islander. It's really cold out here, so I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Good morning from the secret Buena Vista Rural Club. We slept well last night. I had an American coffee this morning with some American cookies, courtesy of Toby. And today we're going to be looking around the property and going more into depth on Toby's vision and more of his life story.
Bienvenidos, buenos días, and welcome to the Buena Vista Rural Club here in the rural park of Teno. It's a protected area, and it's the 1/3 massif of the island of Teno. You see behind you the massif of Teno, which is this mountain range here. 10 minutes from Masca, which is the Machu Picchu of Europe, according to the Sunday Times, I believe. So what is the Buena Vista Rural Club? Buena Vista Rural Club is a dream, really. It's my dream. It's been fermenting in my head for, I suppose, a decade. When I came out to Tenerife in 2011 from London, this farm was firmly on my agenda. It was at that time had gone bankrupt. It belonged to the family from my cousin, and it owed rather a lot of money, mostly to my own parents. Through a protracted legal battle, we managed to get the land. And we then had the land, but nothing really to do with it. It was always my dream to convert it into something like the Buena Vista Rural Club. And yes, it is a play on the Buena Vista Social Club, the band from Cuba. It works well, you see. It works in English and in Spanish. Very important living in the two worlds, in the world of the Spaniard and the world of the British, English, Anglo-Saxon, to have words and names that are easily transportable from one culture to the other. Buena Vista Rural Club is that, although of course it would be a Club Rural de Buena Vista in Spanish, but this is the heart of the Buena Vista farm. These 5 terraces, you can count them here from the almond tree there, terrace number 1. Terrace number 2 is a smaller piece here with St. John's wort. What you take if you're depressed. You're supposed to take St. John's wort, or maybe not, because it can make you depressed. Number 4 is just up here, and we're going to look at that in a minute, and I'm going to show you some features of that. And terrace number 5, you can just see the metal point sticking out, and it's delimited by the white flag at the end that's flapping. You can see the white flag at the bottom there, and the white flag there, and the white flag up at the top of the hill. That is a boundary here that splits the farm between one family and the other family. And the other family, they present own half of the farm. The farm is approximately 120 acres. Approximately 60 acres are mine, and 60 acres are the other family. In Spanish it's called serventía de paz, rights of passage over each other's land because of the roads and pathway system. This is access for a tractor, mainly an access for a tractor for them to get into their fields, which are here. Now these fields looked like that 2 years ago, covered in brush, 2-3 meters high, impossible to see anything in it, and you can see just in this one piece of land, you can see a broom there, brezo. This is a protected species. That is a very slow growing tree, very hard wood. People make pipes out of that. Of course, you've got other traditional plants here which are hugely protected. This is the canary bellflower. Its Latin name is Canary canarensis, and it is exclusive to the Canary Islands. In fact, if you look at the Canary Island coat of arms, you'll see that flower on it. You can be heavily fined for cutting back on that. But you can see, although it's a rare plant, here, it goes all the way up here, all the way up there. It's abundant in this particular area, because this particular area is a nature reserve. You know, it's a protected corner of the island, which has been ravaged by tourism ever since jets started arriving here in the 1960s. This is a very special place because it really is based as Tenerife was hundreds of years ago. Old ways, new paths. And it means that we look for opening up the countryside with with old ways, old pathways, but with new paths being, you know, we've introduced solar, wind energy, solar energy, water distribution in a modern way. We're living here very much like our grandfathers would have lived here. And that's fascinating because if you look at how the Canary Islands have developed over the last 50 years, it's taken one huge jump. They say from Gofio to Solomillo, from burro to Mercedes. Gofio, which is a traditional grain here, we've gone straight from Gofio grain to beef steak, and we've gone from the donkey to the Mercedes in one huge generational jump. There are people alive still who remember the flock of goats coming through the town and the goats being milked literally on the doorstep.
Yeah, so last night we were talking with our friend. She said during COVID, an older man came down the hill because, you know, he had to get groceries and he didn't have a car.
Go shopping.
He came down on a donkey.
On his donkey.
And the police said, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "I don't have a car.
This is my mode of transport." Yeah. And there are people still like that who live here. And
so Toby, spending so much time in London, was there something about London or working there that drove you and made you think, hey, like, where does this come from? Where was this born?
For me, London was always temporary. I was born in Venezuela in the 1960s, in the boom time of the golden age of Venezuela, and was very fortunate to be brought up there. But I was sent to England to school because I come from a British family. So we used to fly backwards and forwards unaccompanied across the Atlantic in VC-10s. I used to clock up about 25,000 air miles a year at 9 years old. We lived in this very modern, Americanized city of Caracas. You ask about the industrial relations between the fruit companies and Fifes. The industrial relationships between any company and the Spanish working class in the early 30s was one of outright confrontation and war. And my grandfather talks about it. He says that in his memoirs that the Spanish population are very unsuited to democracy. And he was probably right.
This is a true adventure cat.
Adventure cat. He's like a dog. He follows me around. He's fantastic. Visto.
They say that animals absorb the energy of the owner.
Yeah, or maybe the owner absorbs the energy of the animal. This here is what I call the devil's droppings. The devil's droppings are these rocks here. They're rather large rocks that have rolled down the hill and stopped here. Thank goodness, because they could have stopped down there. So here, can you imagine an exhibition highlighting the ingredients of Gofio, the cereal I was talking about earlier, for instance. Gofio is usually made from toasted grain, maize, wheat, barley, all sorts of things they put in it, and they toast it up and they grind it up into a very fine powder. It's a little bit like cement in texture, and when you put it in your mouth it's a little bit like cement as well. It's very dry. Makes me laugh because I've lived here all my life, and of course I've tasted Gofio all my life, and I don't like it. And when a Canario offers me Gofio and they say to me, "Come on, have some Gofio," and I say, no, thanks, honestly. And he goes, really, you've got to taste it. It's the most amazing stuff. And I say, listen, I've tasted it hundreds of times, and you're never going to convince me that it tastes anything like cement powder. But Gofio can be combined with honey and almonds. We have almonds here, we have honey here on the farm, we have the cereals growing here on the farm. We can show them all in microcosm here, how they're actually grown, how it goes from the plant to the product. The same thing would apply to other foods like the mojo canario we were trying last night. It comes in a green variety, but it was made with cilantro or coriander. And it's made with a red variety, which is made with a special red pepper from the island of La Palma. They eat it here with fish, with potatoes, on anything. like an American would use ketchup. It has a very rich taste, very garlicky taste. We welcome guests here at the moment. We get guests here and people come and walk around, and I don't charge them anything. I ask them to make a small contribution if they'd like to. But there will come the time when we have an entry fee.
You've been doing YouTube videos for over 3 years. In fact, that's how you found me. So you're always on YouTube. We need to get him to 1,000 subscribers, you guys. So check the links in the description. You're gonna learn a lot of things on his channel. It's a do-it-yourself, philosophical, and out here in nature channel, right? Yeah. So that's where you get to know Toby more.
You see me restoring the clubhouse, which is this ruin that's behind here. Yep. Well, half of it is still ruined, and the other half of it is being restored. It's where we stayed and slept last night.
Last night I felt like I was turning the lights off, like it was a candlelight, and like that's how people slept centuries ago. Well, not even centuries, right?
We had a candle and an open fire, didn't we?
Yeah, we sat there talking.
Couldn't have had the light on, but you know, I have an electric solar system which is 12 volts lighting all the way around the farm, and I have the latest Eco Flow battery, you know, battery generator type thing. So we have modern things, but in an old context,
right?
And we try and keep the things as old-fashioned as possible to try and keep those roots, live like they used to live 100 years ago, wherever possible. And you can see that the vegetation here grows very quickly, the brambles and stuff.
This is an island of microclimates, right?
And things grow here like wildfire. So here is the fifth and highest of the terraces in this central piece. And here I would envisage there being like picnic tables where people can sit and look out over the view. You'll have to take my word for it because the clouds today obscure quite a bit, but this is absolutely fantastic. You know, we're getting splattered with slight moisture, rain. That's, by the way, here called a mojabobo. Mojar is wet, bobo is a fool. Yeah, so this is a mojabobo. Only fools get wet when the weather's like this, because only fools are out in the mojabobo. This would have been used to bring the tractors up this way, or the old animals. You know, they would have used beasts, donkey, mule, and bullocks, big bulls. Bring the pathway up. Come on, we're up here. Yeah, we're up here. So in a direct line up to there, to the white flag up there, all the way down here. So all of this becomes the seventh terrace, the sixth terrace, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, I think up to 15. Up on the 15 we've got the coffee. We'll go and see that a bit later.
And that's basically how they have to utilize the land here, because it's so inclined. If you would drive across the north side of the island, that's what you would see.
Terraces. These are large, very large terraces compared to, say, for instance, the terraces you could see over on that mountain over there.
As a child, and you go back to school in London, you tell your friends, "Oh, I'm going to Venezuela, or I'm going to the Canary Islands." What did they think? Were they able to relate with you? Or
funnily enough, I had a motorbike, a little 50cc mini trial, and I used to ride that on the streets in Caracas, in fact, and I was 10. And at school, I would tell my friends that I had a motorbike and that I would ride it on the streets. And the headmaster called me into the office. He said to me that I should be ashamed of myself for going around telling such terrible lies, and that he was going to write to my parents and tell my parents what a terrible liar I was, how I made up stories. It was very satisfying when my mother replied to the letter by sending him a photograph of me and my motorcycle in Venezuela and said, "It's absolutely true." Even though you can't conceive that a 10-year-old might be riding around on a motorcycle on the streets. In Caracas, it's the Wild West, you can do what you like. So there was this enormous contrast between my life in the UK in a British public school meaning a private, in English terms. Public schools are the elite private schools, are called public schools, like Eton or And we used to play Eton at rugby, for instance. I was at a school called the Oratory, a Catholic lay school. And my sister, I remember my sister telling a story of she went to the botanical gardens on a trip with the school, and she was telling her friends that, oh, we have flowers like this at home in our garden. And the teacher called her out for being a liar as well, and saying, how could you tell such lies? These beautiful flowers don't live in people's gardens, they live in the jungle, you know. Of course, we lived in an amazing place. This is the giant dandelion. You can see it here. It's just like the dandelion that we know, it's just giant.
Wow.
It's absolutely huge, it's like a dinosaur. And that survived the Ice Age. So we have it here as a species, and it's abundant. You can see it here. This is invasive, it's invaded all of this peaky century plant, which is this thing that grows up here. That was brought in by the British to feed cattle, and that's an invasive species here. This is Higos picos, yes.
So this is invasive, but you can still use these.
Oh, yes, and certainly during the famine years here in the Canary Islands, which were, you know, the beginning of the 20th century, they ate everything, including these things. They used to barbecue them, take the spines off them and barbecue the actual cactus, because there was no food here. Many people, especially from the Canary Islands, were going across to South America. The Canary Islands were part of Spain, but they were not recognized as Spaniards. They were the same as the criollos. Canary Islanders were like second-class Spanish citizens. Back then, not now. You know, we're very much part of Spain now, and an integrated part of Spain. But back then, we were a conquered race. In fact, the conquistadores learnt their trade here.
Yeah, so they were the native Guanche. They think maybe the Romans
They
brought
weren't
them here.
necessarily Berbers, but yeah. Some of their origin was Berber, some of their origin was Scandinavian, Roman, shipwrecked sailors. I mean, there was a great mixture of blood here.
And so they've done countless DNA tests in Puerto Rico, for example, or Cuba, and they find this Aboriginal blood or this Aboriginal DNA tracing back to here.
Yep.
In the modern ethnicities of Puerto Rico. So you can find people in New York City, Chicago, Miami, all with roots here.
You know, we have a native goat species, the canary goat, and that canary goat can be traced back by DNA to Egypt 5,000 years ago. The goat came from Egypt 5,000 years ago to the Canary Islands. How did that happen? Who brought it? We'll never know. There is unwritten history that the Egyptians regarded the Canary Islands, and especially this big white peak they could see from the coast of Africa, there, where the sun set behind this white peak. They say that was a pyramid. The pyramids were modelled on the Teide, which they could see with the sun going down, because they believed that their god Ra lived the other side of the volcano, that they could see on the horizon, but not come here. Or maybe they did come here. Maybe they did come here with their goats. Because at that time, at the time of the Ice Age, the Sahara Desert was a green forest. And of course, Teide would have been completely snow-covered. The temperatures were much lower than they are today. But the Ice Age itself didn't reach the lowlands of Tenerife, which is why we have this unique flora and fauna which escaped.
Did Charles Darwin come here?
Charles Darwin did come here. He got as far as Santa Cruz, and he was confined to his ship because of a cholera epidemic in London, and he was absolutely furious because they didn't let him get off the boat, because he was on the way to the Galapagos Islands to discover the Galapagos Islands. He was following in the footsteps of the famous German botanist and explorer called Alexander von Humboldt. And Alexander von Humboldt had come a few years before, and he had, when he saw the Orotava Valley, he fell to his knees and he declared that this was the most beautiful place that he'd ever seen in the world. And Alexander von Humboldt went everywhere. He went all over the Americas, all over South America. He was a very well-traveled individual. Of course, he saw it before the tourist boom and the concreting of much of the island, which was done in a sort of unregulated, massive way, like a lot of Spain, like the Torremolinos and Benidorm. we had a similar boom here in Tenerife. Luckily, my father recognized and bought the customs house. The customs house in Puerto de la Cruz was a ruin at that time. When we used to come, we used to have about 150 buckets that we used to have to put under the leaking roof when it rained. Had no electricity. It had 16 squatters living in the downstairs with no toilet, no light.
And it caused a ruckus with your grandmother.
Caused an absolute crock. Yeah, she used to call it the fish house. Of course, that was a literal translation of the house was known as Casa de las Lonjas, because it had lonjas, which are saltfish store in the bottom, which these people who lived there had as a business. In 1973, 74, my father did something which was unheard of in those days in Spain. He bought these people a flat and a new business premises so they could move out and go into a modern flat and a modern commercial premises, which is now just in Puerto de la Cruz is by the Plaza Europa, and is a bar now, and it's called Las Salinas. But before that, in the end of the 19th century, 1890s, people used to come here, very rich people, because it was difficult to get here in those days. They had to come by boat, of course. They would come here mainly for convalescing. And we had very famous people come here. The King and Queen of England, when they were, I think, princes and princesses, they came here. The King of Spain, Alfonso XIII, came here before the Civil War. There's a very nice old photograph of the British community welcoming them into the Tauro gates. And it says, Alfonso XIII, welcome and God bless you, in English, above the thing. And we have there the British Library, the Anglican Church. The only Anglican church in all of Spain was here. The only Anglican cemetery is also in Puerto de la Cruz. So imagine 100 years ago, the big bullocks would be drawing the carts, and they would come along this stone path made of stone, and they would bring their empty wagons, and you can see these giant dandelions. I mean, look at that. This is what I was telling you about, the verode. This is a typical canary protected species. Beautiful plant. You can see it's like spongy. There's a spider. These ones here. Oof. They're called araña piconas because they give you a nip. We have about 350 species of biting spider in the Canaries. Web goes all the way across the path. The silk is quite strong.
And your hat, it has to have the cobwebs on it for it to be authentic.
The hat has to have the cobwebs from the banana plantations, where we have, of course, the banana spiders, which also are pretty vicious buggers. I just got myself with a spine in there. You see it? Mm-hmm. Let's get it out. That's a cactus spine straight in the elbow. And we're about to come to one of the really amazing bits of this farm, something which I have uncovered from scores of years of neglect and abandonment. I mean, all of this was up to here, all the way across. Blackberries were farmed here by my cousin. That's what it was all about. This is what's called an era, E-R-A, era. And you can see it's round. This is where they would have threshed the corn. So what the idea here is that from the center, there'd be a pole, and on the pole would be a rope, and on the outside would be 1 or 2 oxen, and they would go round in circles here, pulling a thing that looks like a surfboard with stones on the bottom of it. The corn would be here on the floor, and it would be threshed. They would get the grain away from the ear. Then, through this hole here in the wall, the grain would come out of here into the truck, into the cart, and then the cart would go back down that way and out of the farm, taking here the grain. Probably have been wheat, actually, or barley, or cebada, which is barley.
Here you have an example of this right here, right?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the one. And they would milled it, and you can still buy Gofio from El Palmar. You can still buy. This is the local village of El Palmar. And of course, millions of people come to Mascay every year. And one of the ideas, one of the things that we've got to work on is how do we get people from Mascay to go just a little bit extra, 3-4 miles, 10 minutes by car to come here. And Mascay is completely chock-a-block with people, and you go in there, you see the whole village in about 3 minutes. It takes about an hour and 20 to get there, and then it takes about an hour and 20 to get back from there. So that's like half a day to go and see something that you can traipse around and see the whole thing in 20 minutes. And this strip here is an experimental thing, because what we do here is we plant and sow vegetables, potatoes or whatever, but using strictly traditional hand methods. It's a very small patch, but to do that is weeks of work, and it just brings us back to our root of what enormous effort was made by our ancestors to do agriculture. Because now it's easy now, you've got a big tractor and you pull a plow behind it and it churns up the soil, and it's all very easy. When you actually have to do that by hand, boy, oh boy, is that hard work. And here we're planting these aloes all the way down. And this is going to be like aloe alley.
Aloe.
These are all going to be planted. All of these. And we've got another about 200 down below a bit further. These will be revived as soon as they're put into the ground. The bees have this complete field here, an area to feed off. We still have Visto with us. Isn't he an amazing cat? Right?
It is.
I love him. He is, and he loves it here. And he came here when he was a kitty, and you couldn't get rid of him. He used to share our sandwiches. Money comes in, money goes out. It just is the most incredible drain of money here. I can't tell you how many thousands have gone in. Everything that I own has gone into this farm. And now we're in a situation where there's no fat left. All the fat's been consumed. So the money comes in in the morning and it goes out in the afternoon to all the things that we have to do. One of which is to buy some agricultural machinery that can cope with this amount of land. Believe you me, every bone in my body aches. I take cumin tablets every morning. They work like magic.
And you're also 65.
I'm 65. Seems like I was 18 yesterday, but I am 65. And I feel like I'm much younger than that. I came here when I was 51 from London. And I had 2 years of party. It was great fun.
It's really easy to fall into the beer drinking, cheap alcohol lifestyle.
But after 2 years of that, it's boring, and I stopped drinking again, and I don't drink alcohol now. I don't smoke cigarettes.
Trust me, I tried to get him to drink with me. I wanted to share a beer with a legend, eh?
Or even share the liqueur we make here on the farm, made out of those cactuses.
Yeah, we'll try it later.
But I don't drink it. I have never drunk it. I've been told that it tastes very good by people who have tried all sorts of liqueurs, and the terrible thing is that if I drank one glass of it, I would drink a bottle of it, and if I drank a bottle of it, I'd drink a case of it, and if I drank a case of it, I'd contain a load of it, and if I contain a load of it, I'd lose 3 or 4 months of my life again, and I don't want to do that, because there was a time when I used to drink a lot. Beginning to sprout, and soon this will be a complete field of potatoes. We put about 100 euros worth of seed stock into this one little patch, and out of this one little patch we should get hopefully 5,000 euros worth of. At the episodes in my channel, you'll see that right back at the beginning, I don't know, episode 8, 9, a guy called Neil Davidson comes from London. And Neil Davidson is an inventor. He's an inventor and a professional gambler, I think. Anyway, I'm probably making it sound a bit more romantic than it is. But anyway, he's got a lot of money. He's an investor, and I brought him here and showed him this place, and he looked at it and he said, "Wow!" He said, "This is the most beautiful part of Tenerife I've ever seen." He knows Tenerife quite well. He said, "This is the most beautiful part of Tenerife," but he says, "Toby, you're completely mad." He says, "Your dream, it's impossible. What you are planning to do here is impossible." And you know what? thank you, Neil, for saying that, because that spurred me on so much. When he said it was impossible, I said, well, you just wait. I said, come back in 2 or 3 years' time and you see what I've done with this place and you'll be amazed. Now, I thought 2 or 3 years and I'd have it finished, but 2 or 3 years here and I'm just beginning to scratch the surface of what is needed. This is a lifelong project, you know, lifelong in terms of it'll outlive me.
So Spain has made international news the last few years with the tourism, right? Not always the best.
Well, they're biting the hand that feeds them, obviously. Especially here in the Canary Islands, the standard of living would be zero if there wasn't tourism. My father always used to say it, if you do things half well in the Canary Islands, you can make a fortune because everything is below par. Everything is done badly here. Everything, apart from the fiestas. The fiestas are the one thing which you can guarantee will happen on time and be spectacular. But everything else is done badly. You know, service, engineering, maintenance. It's all appalling, absolutely appalling. There's never a time when you can go to a shop and buy something on the first time. You've always got to go back 2 or 3 times to complete your mission. Every time. And then they have to order the parts from outside, from another island or from the peninsula. And you're waiting weeks and weeks and weeks. And then, of course, you've got the different customs regulations here. So anything that comes from Spain has to go through customs. I say, in Tenerife, it's a paradise to live, but it's absolute hell to get anything done. And that's what life is like here. We have a fantastic life. It is paradise, perfect. But don't try and get anything done here because you will be bogged down in red tape, regulations, and non-availability of whatever you want. These people are not based on in any kind of a reality. They're based on this sort of socialist dream of Spain. And Spain is as close to a communist country now as you could possibly get. And that's far left. The regime is far left. And you know, money doesn't grow on trees. Money has to come from somewhere. And here in the Canary Islands, yeah, it would be great. It would be great to go back 100 years. It'd be great not to have any tourists, yeah? But now, get your kit on, start ploughing the fields, start planting the crops, start growing your own food, start suffering hunger, start suffering, you know, the kinds of things that the Canary Island population had to go through 100 years ago, right? What we're going to be highlighting here in the Buena Vista Rural Club, right? Exactly that, right? Yes, it's a romantic idea. Yes, it's a fantastic dream. Yes, it's a vision, yes? And we want to see how, you know, you have to drink goat's milk straight from the teat because there's no pasteurization and there's no UHT milk. You know, all the milk here in Tenerife is UHT. You can go into a bar and ask for a café leche, right? But leche originally was evaporated milk and condensed milk put together because the taste of the milk was so ghastly and evaporated out of a tin because they didn't have any milk. The only milk came from the herd of goats that was driven through the town in the morning. And the goat man came. When I was a child, this was like what it was like. The herd of goats would come through the town and stop at your front door, and the goat herd would milk the goat into a tin and hand it to you. That was your fresh milk. It's great milk, but it's strong, it's full of vitamins. Combined with Gofio, it made the population strong. And when you talk about a Canario, right? A Canario is terribly proud of Gofio makes you strong, Gofio builds your body. It's Gofio and goat's milk. A lot of the Gofio is imported, and the milk all comes in from all sorts of different places and is processed out of all proportions to UHT, whatever that stands for, ultra heated something or other, I don't know, treatment. You can leave your milk for 6 weeks on the shelf and it won't go off here, because it's not fresh. This is a 40-year-old Kohler engine, or 8 horsepower. 8 horsepower? Of course, now in the wintertime it rains so frequently you don't need the irrigation, but each one of these plants is individually irrigated. There are the plants, the coffee plants. All of this doesn't get cleared, but it gets thinned. The coffee grows in the shade of the, you wouldn't believe it today, but we do get very sunny days.
Just like in Costa Rica.
And the metal is to protect from the rabbits. Rabbits are very partial to coffee. They like a nice coffee. What we call Julia's Corner. My mother was Julia. Julia's Corner, she said that she'd like to build a house here. Of course, she wouldn't be allowed to build a house, but if she could, she would have built a house here. And she loved this view. This was her favorite place. So I call it Julia's Corner in her memory. The idea here is to have a mountain climbing school. That rock face, have, you know, somebody who knows what they're doing, not me. Some professional mountain climbers helping day trippers to go mountain climbing up there. And we now go from the agricultural belt of the farm into the forest of the farm. And the forest consists of brezo and laurel. Brezo is briar, I believe. Laurel is laurel. Now you can look across here, that's our very own pet volcano there. Not on our land, but that is a volcano. That mountain there. It hasn't erupted for a few thousand years, thank God. Over 350 volcanoes in Tenerife. We have the one famous one, the Teide. There are many, many more. We started at the bottom at 550 meters above sea level, and we're here at 715 meters above sea level, which is 2,350 feet above sea level. But here we're about 1/3 of the way. And up here behind us, we've probably got another 5 kilometers, which would be what, 3.5 miles, 4 miles of, look at this wall right now. Who built that? And when was it built? You know, and when did this part of it collapse? You know, at what stage? Now the question, Elliot, is do you want to continue?
Yeah, the hiker in me wants to see what's around the corner.
Right. Well, let's go. Look how I'm already dripping in sweat. It's hard going for me, but I will go and keep going. And I've done this regularly, this way. I wouldn't go that way, you'll get lost.
So you can actually get lost on this island, like in Hawaii.
I have been lost on the side of this mountain for 2 hours with my friend Nobby from England. And in fact, you can look back at Buena Vista Rural Club episode and you can see it's called Lost in the Woods. And we were lost for 2 hours up here. But I think I now know the way.
Well, Toby, there's no tourists up here. This is a recipe for disaster.
This is virgin forest. Apart from me and 1 or 2 others, this route here, no one's been up here in 50, 60 years. Look at these trees growing in the middle of the path. The path becomes very difficult to follow, becomes very overgrown. This is still in what I would consider to be the bottom third of the farm. I find it very difficult to believe that I'm 65. Seems that just yesterday I was 18. Time goes so fast, especially when you're having fun. My advice to anybody is live in the moment, enjoy every moment, and you'll never appreciate that until it's gone, until you're there.
That's probably my favorite thing about YouTube, is I get excuses to meet people like you.
YouTube's brought me together with a lot of people.
Okay, we just got done marching through the woods like lost idiots, but we made it.
We've made it here a little bit out of breath, but with a bit of perseverance we made it. And this is the Camino Real. This is the Spanish way, the Spanish march route that went across the back of the island. This dates back literally to the 15th century and was where the conquistadores came. This was their highway, their super highway through the island. And here is the upper gate to the upper part of the farm. Above here is 2/3. 2/3 of the farm above. Now there's grilled cheese on the grill, there's red mojo and green mojo. We were talking about that earlier, which is miel de palma, which is from the middle of the heart of the palm. It's called honey, but it's not honey, it's sap from the middle of the palm. And what you do is you take the cheese, chop it into, and like a lot of things in the Canary Islands, all these dishes, they're made for sharing. You know, us Northern Europeans and I don't know about Americans, we find a bit disgusting.
Yeah.
But everybody just piles in with their fork and
Americans, we're possessive. Yeah. We might share some nachos or some wings, but we're very possessive. We like a big fat plate of food.
Everything here is dip and share, and the area is famous for artichokes. and they grow really well. We have them growing on the farm, and fried egg, right? So you've got grilled artichokes and fried egg. The combination of these two things is going to be absolutely phenomenal, I'm sure. And here we go. This one we don't share. We take half each onto our plate, and you can have the greenery as well. Very picky, and artichokes are my favorite vegetable. Of all vegetables, artichokes are my favorite. These ones, I'm sure, are going to be great. What do artichokes taste like? I resisted the temptation of saying like chicken, but I said artichokes taste like artichokes. There is nothing else in this world that tastes like artichoke. This is beef, grilled beef, al ajillo with garlic and chips, and a piece of apple and a piece of bubango. And you put a bit of lemon on it like this, because you can't have anything without lemon here.
I like the bottle. This is
A chupito of Buena Vista Rural Club Armagnac. This is made from prickly pear, like we saw earlier.
ah, that's what it's called in English. Prickly pear.
Higo pico.
Let's give it a go. Smells good. It's very fruity, almost like an orange or an apricot, like a mix.
Arriba pa abajo, el centro pa dentro.
Oh, that's delicious.
Bottoms up.
Very dangerous. You can't taste any alcohol in it. You don't want to. You don't want a shot.
No. One shot would lead to another. I'd probably have a good time though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've never seen a Brit turn down a drink with me. I've never had that in my life.
Oh, well, you know.
Toby, we've had a full-on day. We've seen the whole farm. I've learned a lot about your life.
Bottom third of the farm.
Yeah, the bottom third. It goes way up there, and everything changed. It's an enchanted, scary, mystical forest up there. I learned that, like, at the end of the day, this is like your safe, humble abode where you always fall back onto, no matter what happens in the world. What are your final thoughts? Where do you see the world in the future? Where do you see yourself? And how does this play into everything?
Well, you know, the world is a unpredictable place. I think we live in very, very, very turbulent times. I think everybody should have half an eye on being a prepper, preparing for the end of the world. And I don't know, but I can't think of a better place to prepare for the end of the world than here. We grow our own vegetables, we have our own animals, we could be self-sufficient if we needed to be here. And that would be a fantastic thing to be, because we have our own solar lighting, we have our own water, we have our own facilities here. We're completely off-grid. We can prep for that end of the world scenario. Whatever happens in America, whatever happens in Europe, whatever happens in Russia, whatever happens in the Middle East, here is my domain. Here is my farm. Here is my future. And me, I was born in Venezuela, brought up in Britain, and I'm gonna die in the Canaries.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next adventure from a different country. Special thanks to Toby. I'll end on that note. See you guys later. I hope you enjoyed that video. It was a different format, and I just want to let you know, if you feel like you have a unique story to share, whether it's in Europe, United States, or anywhere south of the United States in a country that speaks Spanish, but you're fluent English and you want to share your story and you think that it fits with my vision of showing the Spanish-speaking world to an English-speaking audience, or just an English-speaking audience in general, and it fits within the niche that you've seen on this channel over and over again, please let me know. You can write me via my email that's in the description of this video. And if you feel like supporting these adventures and these videos, these projects of mine, feel free to check out the links in the description via my Patreon or YouTube memberships, or other links to donate to the channel, and everything I make will be going to future productions. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Ciao, ciao.